many of you, I think, might have read about it, that in the Middle Ages and even up till the 19th century, pretty much, Czech Republic or the area around the Central European, Prague and all the other cities were pretty much the hubs of slave trade in some way or form. And obviously, I think for the good reason or the bad reason, many of the Muslim traders even were the renowned slave traders in the Eastern African regions. You might have seen and read about the stories of traders coming in with a number of slaves and selling them on the markets. So this was, again, a historical issue that obviously when Prophet ﷺ came across, and he really came across as a person who was uprooting the concept of discrimination from the society. And we see it happening in reality. We see Bilal bin Rabah, Bilal Habshi, as he is known as one of the equals, or even the first amongst the equals. You know, if you think about it, he was known as the Sayyidina Bilal by the likes of Umar bin Farooq and Abu Bakr bin Siddiq. And he was an Abyssinian slave, obviously. He came into Makkah as an Abyssinian slave. And the story, we all know how he was bought over by Hazrat Abu Bakr and freed on as a free man. And then he became a foremost companion of Prophet ﷺ. And he was highly regarded across the whole society. Zaid bin Harsa, I think, is another example that we know that how slavery was impacting not only the black nations as such during this phase of Arabia, but it was this open market. Anyone who could overpower any other tribe were free to make the other people as their slaves and become kind of owners of them in any way or sense. And Zaid bin Harsa suffered the same. Bilal, we know, suffered the same, and so many others who were actually slaves. And then they were freed, and then they were obviously becoming companions and much more revered in the eyes of Muslims. But yeah, so it is a complex historical issue, I think, that is coming to the forefront now in the Western societies. And now that everyone is really focused on diversity, equality, justice, freedom, and all the buzzwords we hear very often in the social networks and the social systems of the Western countries, it is becoming to the forefront on how people who are just born with a different color tone or different color of their skin end up living a very different life. So these issues, these are things that are going to shape up for the future of our society. But equally, I think that there is some, obviously you might have seen, many of you might have read the news and the recent paper that has been published by the Dutch University, the University of Amsterdam. And they've conducted the sentiment analysis, as it is known, on the different social media platforms across the world, on Twitter, Facebook, and all the other sentiments. And they've generally reported back onto it that the sentiment analysis shows that people are slightly changing in their behavior from much more volatile, hatred-filled tones, discussions, animosity on the social networks to a bit more empathy-oriented sentiments that is overtaking the majority of the social media. Trends, discussions, comments, anything that is coming across on majority of the discussion forums of the modern world are taking a slightly more empathy-oriented tones as the new study that's been published. And hence, I think the Dutch historian, I'm missing his name, I think Roger Baseman or someone, he obviously came out big in the news in the last 2 days. You might have seen that he's predicting a very different future where the younger generations who are coming up in this environment are going to see the world in a very different manner, in a much more empathy-oriented manner, so that it is going to be a much better place, hopefully, for people to live in the future. But I think all things happening, coronavirus or not, it is a complex mixture of things happening. And I think the point I always make, and I try and bring it in front of everyone, is that whatever happens, it always comes and impacts our brains in some way or form. We as humans are a projection of what is happening within our brains. It's the software that controls, obviously, the whole body motions. The words we speak, the actions we take, the interactions that we have with others, the way we speak to others, the way we behave in front of others is all about the experiences that we have developed within our minds. And every piece of news that basically comes to you, whether it is good news, bad news, terrible videos of destruction, videos of atrocities and torture and all that sort of stuff, it creates a lasting impact on your personality within your brain, obviously. And until and unless, as Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think when he was asked about iman, and he replied in taqwa, and he replied about taqwa ha huna, that taqwa is within your heart. Until and unless you don't have that strong inbuilt mechanism of faith and iman within your own mind, within your own heart, that really distinguishes the good and bad and creates the filter, the criteria, the furqan within your mind, it is going to become confusing more and more in every sense of the word confusion. So any news story, anything that is thrown at you as of value or as right or wrong has to be judged on the filter or the furqan or the criteria that is within your own mind. And that filter is pretty much what definitely we should know as iman. If our filter, the criteria that we have in our minds, is based on the guidelines of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then choosing the right and wrong becomes really easy. Then becoming standing on one side or the other becomes really easy. And it is going to become a massive challenge. I think where we've seen a real drop-off in the last many, probably decades now, as a collective voice of Muslim nations and Muslim Ummah, we might have seen that many of us choose to remain silent in face of atrocities, in face of things that are going wrong, rather than siding with the truth. And that is happening all across the world. Even now, if you see it collectively, when the racial tensions are increasing and all the things that are happening in US, the Muslim voice is probably missing to a certain degree. There isn't any pressure groups or any prominence of Muslim people and voices coming through and really claiming the airspace and saying that the solution for the whole world, the problems that we are facing, the issues that we have on discrimination levels, the issues that we have on a social injustice level, is all about the non-implementation of the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the true and the final guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obviously in the form of Islam that is provided by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a moment. And hence you pick out system by system, element by element, instrument by instrument, and you apply the guidelines, and you will see the solutions will come up. You apply it in the social justice arena, and you find that the inequality in the perception of Islam is completely different to what the Western culture propagates and really think about as inequality and justice. So again, I think that's the whole point of it, of just sharing of some of the highlights that are happening all across the world, and just creating a different perspective that you guys can think about and start really coming up with some things in your own mind and head, that whenever or whatever the chance you have or the chance you are given to raise your voice or come up with a better solution or think about the right direction, then inshallah you can come up with the right approach to it. All right, can I think, what time is it now? 20 minutes here. So Nizam,